Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're getting ready for the next Bassmaster Open on Kentucky Lake. You're going to be seeing this after the event, so we've already been done. So hopefully I won the darn thing and didn't bomb this one. But anyways, I'm going to be fishing a crankbait a lot of this tournament. Hopefully I'm going to catch them on it, especially shallow diving crankbaits. Really just fishing down to max depth of like 6 or 7 feet, something around there. And I just did a video about replacing the treble hooks on your crankbaits. Very important thing that you have to do, especially if you're cranking rock. You know, I find that when your shallow diving crankbait bite is on, you're going to be going through a lot of different treble hooks. And so I'm constantly changing these things out. So check out that video. But another really super important factor when it comes to this category of baits, shallow diving crankbaits, is buoyancy. Buoyancy is one of those critical factors that can really make or break a bite, and it really depends on a multitude of different factors. So I'm just going to kind of break that down for you. I've learned over the years, you know, my personal preferences as far as the less buoyant baits and the very buoyant baits, and so I just wanted to kind of share those thoughts with you. So buoyancy, obviously, how fast a crankbait will rise is something that you know, every single bait's going to be a little bit different. In fact, you could have, especially wood baits, you could have two of the same exact baits and they have a different, you know, rise rate. They have a different buoyancy, and that's because wood is generally a very inconsistent material. The plastic baits, however, really don't have that inconsistency to that extreme, but you can find that some of the plastic baits rise at different speeds, but it's much more rare. Now, the way I decide whether or not I'm going to fish a more buoyant bait or a less buoyant bait really mainly has to do with the cover that I'm fishing. If I'm fishing real snaggy cover, like bigger rocks, or fishing wood laydowns, or fishing grass, or fishing, you know, stumps or things like that, where you're getting around that cover, you're deflecting off of it, and you have a high chance of snagging, the more buoyant baits are really going to be much more efficient because they can really back away from those objects and deflect a little bit better too. Of course, deflection has a lot to do with the bill, which I just watched my buddy Matt Steffen talk about in a video. You got to go check out his video breaking down the different bill styles. So go check out his video on Matt Steffen Fishing. So the bill has a lot to do with deflection, but so does buoyancy. But another thing that happens is when you do get snagged with a buoyant bait, all you have to do is like slingshot snap your line on your rod, and it will actually more often than not just you know, back away. If you have a bait that isn't buoyant and you try to do that, you're talking about like 8 times out of 10 you're going to have to get up to that bait and stick your rod tip down there to get it. But with a really buoyant bait, you can actually, I would say 8 times out of 10, you could snap that line and it'll actually unsnag itself. So when I'm fishing around heavier cover, really digging around you know, things that are real snaggy, the more buoyant baits are going to be better. However, when it's cold and when I'm fishing, you know, smaller rock or shell or things like that, I really do like to have a bait that has less buoyancy. This right here is the Berkley Fritz side. All the products I'm talking about are going to be in the description below, the links. The Fritz side is really cool because it's a great shallow diving crankbait, but it doesn't have a lot of buoyancy. It's a very slow rise. So it has a nice subtle action that works in perfectly in cold water. But also the fact that it slowly rises is great in cold water. Yes, it's more snaggy, but what happens is if a fish is following a bait like this and it pauses, you deflect off of something and you pause it, it just sits right in front of their face and they kind of run into it and they'll open their mouth and choke it down just because, you know, it's right there in front of them. It's almost like a reaction. And so having a bait that has a slow rise in cold water oftentimes is one of my favorite types of baits to throw. And then there's all kinds of baits in between. Like for instance, I've got a shallow diving crankbait that pretty much does the same thing as the Fritz side as far as action and the applications, but it's a little bit more buoyant, so it backs away from the cover a little bit more, so it's a little bit better around the snaggy cover, but still has that tight wobble and the things that I'm looking for in the cold water. So anyways, guys, those are just some thoughts on whether or not you want to pick a buoyant bait versus a non-buoyant bait or something in between. It's something to really pay attention to, but really what it comes down to is water temperature and the available cover that you're fishing and how snaggy it is. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this topic in the comment section below. If you have any questions at all, drop a comment below. Other than that, I'm gonna see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.